Now, before we look at the 5 targets, we should review the syllabus again. We need to be able to fix and flex the 6 aspects of a project in an agile context. We've just looked at the 6 aspects. We need to evaluate the impact of the tolerances set for the 6 PRINCE2 aspects of a project in an agile context, taking into account the rationale for the 5 targets. And then it refers to the sections in the manual. And the 5 targets. And the 5 targets are: be on time and hit deadlines, protect the level of quality, embrace change, keep teams stable, accept that the customer does not need everything. So we're going to talk about each of the 5 targets in turn. And our focus is on understanding why we have these 5 targets, why they've been called targets in PRINCE2 Agile. So they represent the rationale behind the hexagon, behind the 6 aspects. So we want to, the things we're trying to achieve, we're trying to be on time and hit deadlines. We're trying to protect the level of quality. We're trying to embrace change because we know that will happen. We're trying to keep teams stable, and we have to accept that the customer doesn't need everything. So we'll take each of those 5 targets in turn and try and understand why we have them as a target and why they're important and what the advantages of making them a target are. Okay, so the first of the 5 targets, be on time and hit deadlines. Perhaps the most important target in an agile environment. We've already said that typically in an agile environment we fix the time frame with 0 tolerance. So clearly being on time and hitting the deadline is of primary importance. Why is that? Okay, we've got 6 points on the slide and I'll go through each of them in turn. Early realization of benefits. So if we think back to the concepts behind lean startup, early realization of benefits, if we have a target for realizing benefits early on, it's important that we hit them so we can learn the lessons early. So we're looking at delivering a minimum viable product or a prototype, hitting that and realizing those benefits, learning those lessons to apply later on. Second point, helps with planning. So as we saw in Kanban, we deliver some products and functionality, and then we use the information, the qualitative information we gain from delivering that first tranche of work to help plan more accurately future tranches of work. So we're not doing it on gut feel, we're not doing it on assumptions, we're doing it on accurate, real data. And that's something I talk about on the PRINCE2 project in terms of, are we recording effort on projects in the same way that we record the estimates of work? So if we're estimating a piece of work is going to take 10 man days, are the people working on the project recording their time in such a way that we know if it's taken 10 man days or not? Third point, gives confidence. So that's giving confidence both to the delivery team and the wider project team and the wider corporation. The more we hit targets, the more confidence we all gain that we will hit future targets, that our estimating is good, that our capability to deliver on time is good, and that we will do so in the future. The fourth point, there may be no choice. So certainly in some environments you have to be on time and hit a deadline. The classic example from my personal experience is in a bid environment. If you're producing a bid for a piece of work, particularly to government organisations, they have a hard deadline and you either respond by the deadline or you lose, you're out. They won't accept a a bit after the deadline. Other hard deadlines are where we interact with events in the real world. So for an Olympic Games or a World Cup, if stadiums have been built and other projects delivered, they have to be delivered by a certain time before the start of the event. So there really is no choice. You have to be on time and hit the deadline. Other things may be flexible, but you have to deliver the minimum viable product on time. The fifth point, reduce the likelihood of cost overruns. So I think this should be fairly obvious, but if you have a delivery team of any size, but let's say 10 people, for every day you overrun, that's 10 man days of cost overrun. So overruns can very quickly cost a lot of money if you've got a big project team. So ensuring that you're on time and hitting deadlines reduces that likelihood of cost overruns. And if cost is very important, which it typically is, that we don't want cost overruns, then fixing the time and ensuring you deliver on time can help avoid those cost overruns. And again, other things can flex, and if we deliver a viable product on time at cost, then if there's additional products that we have and additional scope that we haven't delivered, we can review that and review the business benefits of whether we want to spend more time and more money delivering them, but we've delivered within the time and cost that was agreed at the start. And the final point, improves reputation, rather similar to gives confidence. So if we deliver on time, it improves the reputation, certainly of you, the project manager, and also the delivery team and the wider project team. And potentially if in a customer supplier and external customer supplier situation in a commercial environment, improves the reputation of your business. The second target, protect the level of quality. Why do we want to protect the level of quality? Well, to avoid the damaging effects resulting from reduced testing. That is, if we reduce the testing, we don't test the product sufficiently. In software terms, there are bugs remaining in the software or in any product. If there's problems remaining in the product that we haven't resolved, we haven't identified through testing, then that can have hugely damaging effects. If you think about the automotive industry, over recent years there have been several manufacturers who previously had high reputations in terms of quality have had to recall cars, sometimes tens of thousands of cars, due to problems with components on the car where maybe they weren't tested as fully as they might have been. Avoid the damaging effects resulting from incomplete documentation. So even in an agile environment, a level of documentation is an essential requirement. We can deliver the best product in the world, but if the user can't use it, you won't realize the benefits. So we need to ensure that there is complete, appropriate documentation. That doesn't mean pages and pages, that there's an amount that's required. We just need an appropriate level, and that is an essential requirement even in an agile environment. We need to avoid the damaging effects of suboptimal design, and this is the first item in the list that really focuses on the real cost of poor quality and its total cost of ownership. So it's not just the cost of producing the product, but what's the cost of ownership over a period of time for the product we're developing. And we need to ensure that the design takes care of that, so we need to protect that level of quality. Damaging effects, we need to avoid damaging effects of lack of appropriate training. So again, similar to incomplete documentation, we need to ensure that the users are using the product in the right way, in the way that's going to realize the most benefits for the organization. And finally, the damaging effects resulting from non-compliance to standards. So we may have different views on standards, but standards are important. We use them all use them in everyday life. I mean, a simple example for mobile phones now, having a standard mini USB charging point for all mobile phones. So we have one set of chargers that works with all mobile phones, except one particular manufacturer who pointedly refuses to go along with that. But the majority of manufacturers are conforming to that standard, which makes life easier for their users. The third target, embrace change. Why do we need to embrace change? Well, the first point is key really. It's inevitable. And the bigger your project, the longer it lasts, the more inevitable it is. And we really just need to think that in simple terms, there's two types of change. There's big change to the overall scope of the project, maybe a change to the project's product. And then there are minor changes where we're refining detail. And clearly PRINCE2 is very comfortable with that. We only plan to the planning horizon. We plan in stages. We manage by stages because we recognise that there will be change as we go through the project. And Agile is really just taking that to an even lower level, really. And that gives a benefit, which is the second point on the slide. A more accurate final product is more likely. So in the same, standard PRINCE2, we manage in stages. We don't try and plan the whole project. And really what we're saying is we don't try and plan the whole product at the beginning. We refine. So we have a product description. We break it down with a work breakdown structure. We define our products, but we embrace the change that we can refine the detail as we go along, and maybe even need to refine and change the product if necessary as we go through. But what we deliver at the end is a more accurate final product in terms of user requirements and business benefit. And we achieve that by flexing what is delivered, but potentially within a fixed time and cost. But we can flex the scope, we can flex the benefits and so on. The fourth target, keeping teams stable. Why do we want to keep teams stable? Well, changing team members can have a detrimental effect, such as time spent bringing new team members up to speed, number of communication lines in the team grows exponentially, an opportunity cost incurred to the areas providing the new people, the team dynamics change and need to be re-established. So really that's looking at the detrimental effect to the individual. So if we have a new team member coming in, they're not as efficient and effective potentially as existing team members, but also because they're joining, because they'll have questions, they'll potentially slow down and make the existing team members less efficient and effective for a period of time. There's different levels of team, and I think in terms of keeping teams stable, if you're on a large project that's over a period of many months, maybe even years, keeping the team stable will be difficult. So again, it's not a question of yes or no, it's a question of how much. And I think really what PRINCE2 Agile is saying is that at the lower levels and the lower periods of time, so within a sprint, you certainly want the team to be stable. Within a delivery stage, if that consists of a number of sprints, you'd really like the team to be stable. Within a management stage, as you go up, you can accommodate more change to teams. And you have to recognise, as per the previous slide, change is inevitable. The team will change. People will leave the organisation. People will be sick. As requirements change, we may need new skills that we don't currently have on the team. So we'll have to adapt as appropriate. But we need to try to keep the team as stable as possible, because stable teams are generally more effective. And the fifth and final target, I accept that the customer doesn't need everything. Why? Usually not everything defined at the start must be delivered. So it is typical to have essential requirements and desirable requirements. And we need to recognise that and make sure there's a realistic definition of what's essential and what's desirable. So I have seen lists of requirements that purport to have a separation of essential and desirable, but where 95% or higher are essential, and that's not really helpful. So you really have to work with the users, with the owners, the customer, to ensure that they are being realistic and sensible about what is really essential and what is desirable, and maybe splitting down into more criteria in terms of highly desirable or different levels of desirable. Many functions and features are rarely or never used. You have to be a bit careful about this. So an example might be a washing machine that many of us might only use 2 or 3 settings on our washing machine, maybe even only 1. But across a range of customers, so across 100 or 1,000 or 100,000 customers, they may use all the functions of the washing machine. So we need to understand who the users are and how many functions the entire user base is likely to use. The same sort of thing would apply to mobile phones, perhaps, and how many features and functions on your mobile phone do you as an individual use, but how much does the whole user base use? The third point is the safest area to compromise on. Well, certainly, if we're delivering to time and cost, we're managing the risks, we're delivering the benefits, and our product has the required quality, then yes, scope can be varied, and certainly the focus is on the benefits. So if we're delivering all the benefits with a reduced scope, then why would that not be safe? The fourth point, this helps when trying to hit deadlines and protect the level of quality. Well, certainly, as we've seen with the hexagon, fixing time and cost, we want to ensure we hit the deadlines, then certainly flexing the scope, flexing what we deliver is the easiest as well as the safest aspect to change. And the final point, delivers what the customer really wants more quickly. And all that's saying effectively is, if you deliver the essential requirements and only essential requirements, you can obviously deliver those more quickly than if you deliver the essential requirements and a number of desirable requirements, because the desirable requirements are going to take some time to deliver. So if you only deliver the essential requirements, you can deliver them more quickly. And I think a more advanced view of that would be, rather than having essential and desirable, you might have a scale, maybe from 1 to 10, where 1 are the most important and 10 are the least important, and you deliver all the 1s first and then the 2s and then the 3s, or certainly focus on the higher priority items, going down to the lower priority items. But it depends on your project how granular you can be. So can you only be essential, desirable? Could you split it into 3 or 5 or 10? I would suggest you couldn't go beyond 10. That might be quite difficult. So you might have 5 categories. You might have minimum viable product, essential for full product, highly desirable, desirable, and nice to have, for instance. So you might have 1 to 5 and you deliver them in that order. But that's just a suggestion. There's no right or wrong. You have to decide as project manager for your project.